Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to our first episode of 2021. I am your host, Professor Jeremy Vilmur, and joining us now, the man of the hour, Bobby Blaze.
Woo! The Nature Boy! Hey, it's not arguable anymore. Sean is the greatest worker in the history of our business. Thus says the Nature Boy. There's you the way to start off 2021. Happy fucking New Year, wrestling fans. Ric Flair saying Shawn Michaels the greatest worker in the history of the business. What do you think about that, Professor?
I know a lot of people like him. I never did, but that's just me. I thought he was kind of a smug asshole, but who am I to argue with Ric Flair?
That's what I'm going with. That's why I brought it up there, man. Man, we got through, the new year. So it's 2021. Forget all the bullshit stuff in the past of last year. Let's move on and make this year a very strong year. Let's rebound this year, man. That's what we need to do. Rebound. How about that?
Just as we were getting ready to record, I was taking a quick look at Twitter, and Mikey Whipwreck posted a picture, and it shows a guy, celebrating that 2020 is over, right? And he's like jumping in the air towards the water on the beach, and it shows a German Shepherd, and it's got 2021 written above his head. German Shepherd's jumping at him, about to bite him on the balls. And I was like, and I think his comment was like, it must be tired because I've been laughing about this for 5 minutes. And I looked at it and I'm like, I'd be laughing about that for at least 5 minutes because that's what I'm afraid of. I'm hoping I
thought you was going to say Randy Orton come out of the water and RKO'd him or something.
that would have done it too,
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm like so afraid that like we're not going to go into.
We're just 3 days into it, man. Let's relax, man.
Oh shit! Good point, Bobby. I'm just gonna chill the fuck out. And you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to give a quick shout out to a fella whose name I am going to just slaughter, Pergor Toium Hero, who left us a review on iTunes last month, or actually in November. And it says, amazing podcast. I found this podcast from their YouTube videos. Fans of old wrestling or wrestling lists, this is a great listen. Bobby Blaze has a unique take on the business from the inside out. Not someone trying to get himself over. He just tells it like it is. I thought that was a great review, so thank you very much, guy whose name I slaughtered, so I'm not going to try again.
Yeah, we'll call him Mr. Hero.
Mr. Hero, that works.
Thanks for listening. He said as long as we keep making podcasts, he'll keep listening. Well, we plan on making a few more here and there, so we'll see. So stick with us, our friend. We appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time to do that.
I've got 2 shout-outs. One from Jesus down in Guatemala. Oh, wait a minute, that could be Jesus from Mexico. Never mind. I've got a shout out to give to one of my newest followers, Thunder Rosa.
Holy smokes.
Started to follow me. Yeah, I was like putting her over on some. Thought she worked her ass off last year. I saw her, just followed her through her social media. She stayed busy, and I'm admired her career since she started, and just kind of watch it grow and develop, and watch her character development, and her intensity and her workouts and her just love the business she has. And I've been following her for quite a while, probably right around NWA when we was watching that. And then she gave me a follow back, so I appreciate that, Thunder Rosa. That's pretty cool, man.
Yeah, absolutely. That chick is 100% work ethic and hustle right there.
Yeah. I watched a couple of her home workouts. We was talking off the air there. She was doing some different things during the COVID when we was locked down, and she was just doing in-home training like Hindu squats and push-ups. She was picking up bottles of water, the 24s or 32s, like deadlifts, and just doing a whole routine right there in the living room, I guess on a YouTube channel, I guess is what I was watching it on. But yeah, that's pretty cool, man. Her career, I think she's got a lot more in her, man. I really do. I think she's going to go a lot higher than where she's at right now, especially when everything out here in the world gets a bit better, we hope,
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I try to follow all my followers back. I miss one here or there, but I certainly notice when someone does follow me. I'm going to jump down because I see what's next is COVID. and someone that follows me on there also I'm a big follower of his. I'm gonna jump down to it if you want to. I'll tell who it is. And I wasn't smartened up until this morning. I'll let you explain what happened, Jeremy. But Mick Foley, what the fuck, right?
Yeah.
I follow Mick Foley, and I get up and I see your message, and I open it up, and boom, there it was. So let's just go get the COVID thing out of the way for a couple other people real quick. But I hate to hear that about Mick Foley. He was doing. Go ahead and read it there, Jeremy, if you want. Do you have it ready?
No, I don't. I was waiting.
He basically said he was doing a virtual reality signing last month and got it. He's been locked down for like 18 days now. And he said, please take this serious, and yourself, like we have been taking it pretty serious, I think. Wearing a mask, washing our hands. And let's see here. I got it right here in front of me. He just got a message. It just says, 1 day ago, I tested positive for COVID following a December virtual signing. And have been isolating in a hotel room for the past 18 days. Please continue to take this virus seriously. Mask up, social distance, look out for one another. Wishing you all a happy, healthy New Year. And I thought that was, just happened to anyone, and it happened to one of our girlfriends. I'll let you announce that one.
This is one I took. Dawn Wells, who played Mary Ann on Gilligan's Island, passed away due to COVID complications this last week.
Yep.
And, for guys our age, I'd say she's probably her and Ginger and maybe Marsha Brady were probably all on the first crush list.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Had to bring up Marsha. Fuck, Marsha. Man, she tough. God. Anyway.
Yeah. But we lost Dawn Wells, and that's the shits.
I had her over. I liked her over Ginger anyway. I really did. That my brother said he'd take Ginger. My cousin take Ginger. I'm taking Dawn, man. I'm taking Dawn. Well, Mary Ann.
Yeah.
That little corn fed, them nice tan legs and those shorts that you liked.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And I can't help but think about the first season of Gilligan's Island. Her and the professor didn't even get their name in the song.
Yeah.
They were just and the rest.
And the rest, yeah.
Yeah. Unbelievable. Yeah, that was one I was just like, I read that like 5 times, just like, that seems fucked up somehow. I mean, that's just not right. And then, of course, the other thing is, Larry King was hospitalized with it last night as well.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yep. Hope he holds up, man.
Yeah, because he's an old cat, and I'm pretty sure being married 6,000 times takes something out of you.
Yeah, for sure. But I was going to tell you, one day we got more time. There's apparently Sherwood Schwartz. That was his fuck you to Hollywood. Was the Gilligan's Island. Each person represented one of the deadly sins. You have to get into it, but it's true. There's some truth in it. I read a book about it. It's pretty interesting.
Now, I saw that as a theory. I'd never seen anything that said that was the actual case, though.
Well, it's in a book that was a theory, and it was basically he'd tell them to fuck themselves. It was an inside joke for him that he's writing these characters with, the ultimatum of ultimate fuck off,
Yeah.
Anyway, we even brought up what we're talking about today, man, who our topic is. We brought it up the last couple episodes, how we're doing these things. And I know we got a sponsor, so I'm going to go ahead and give out who's today's topic, who we're talking about today. And you can fucking do our ad if you want.
Okay.
This week we're talking about Jim Morrison and the Doors, folks.
That's right.
We're talking about JJ Dillon, man. He's going to be our topic because we're going to be heading over towards the Carolinas and ultimately talking about Ric Flair in the next couple weeks. But, we're going to be doing a special today. It's on JJ.
Yeah.
And we have a sponsor this week. And who's our sponsor this week?
Well, our sponsor this week is Audible Plus through Amazon. And if you go over to tinyurl.com/bbaudible, you'll get 30 days free, I believe. And then what it is it's kind of like the subscription model. Instead of just buying books, you get access to a number of podcasts and books and newspapers and things like that, and just as part of the subscription. Definitely worth checking out. So again, tinyurl.com/bbaudible.
Yes. All right. JJ was born James Albert Morrison in Trenton, New Jersey on June 26, 1942. About read something else there. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I read his book. We'll give a plug for his book right here while we're at it. Why not? It's Wrestlers Are Like Seagulls, From McMahon to McMahon by James J. Dillon. Come out in 2005 by James Morrison and Scott Till. You can get that book using the tinyurl.com/Blaze JJD. Again, that's tinyurl.com/Blaze JJD, and you can get that book off of Amazon and get a little kickback out of that, man. And that'd be nice to do. One of the things he wrote at the beginning, I'm just going to do some highlight little stuff here, then we'll come back, and we kind of got this in order. But as I was reading some of the interesting stuff, he put, remember, don't be afraid to dream, because dreams can come true, and I'm living proof that they do. One thing he used to ride a bike, he used to walk to, he used to catch a train to. He was always going to the shows. He was a big fan of professional wrestling. In 1959, I find this interesting, he met Larry Simon. Some of y'all may know who that is and may not know who that is. But anyway, he was a wrestler who lived in New Jersey. They struck up a conversation, and Simon invited him back to his home. They ate some pizza together. The boys were already in bed. He showed him a photo when he wrestled as Otto von Krupp. 3 years later, he was known as the Great Malenko. And I thought that was really cool, man, because JJ talked about what a mark he was for the business. And I'll let Professor say a little bit more, unless you want me to go on, JJ, about JJ. You want me to go on?
Well, you know what? I want to point this out, because I'm glad you had this book, because James J. Dillon is almost an invisible man online. Outside of a handful of the same stories, it was hard to come up with info. I'm thinking, this guy's been around for damn near 60 years in the business. Well, there's going to be all sorts of stuff to talk about, and you have to dig to come up with anything on this guy. So I'm thinking he must have worked for the CIA or something, and he's paying people off to not talk about him.
Well, he used to travel by train to different towns like Philly. He started making the Trenton show every week, and that's where he started selling wrestling programs once he got his driver's license. In exchange for that, he'd get a free ticket to the show, and he'd make a few dollars, and that was his first official job in a wrestling business. But JJ didn't consider it his first official job. I'll get that in a second. JJ said he was a big-time mark for the business. George Bolus, who was a Zebra Kid from 1948 to 1963, told JJ to go to college and also learn how to wrestle. JJ was a swimmer and a baseball player, admitted he wasn't very good at either, but he enjoyed them. But he also had taken up judo lessons, which would later help him. And at college at Albert College in Reading, Pennsylvania, he was on a wrestling team for 2 years, man. So that's kind of just kind of give you an idea of some background. One night in Philly, Dominic DiNucci and Professor Tanaka would work out with him at the YMCA. Al Costello locked up with them. They had all helped him in some small way. So, on July 11th, 1962, at Vineland Speedway in New Jersey, he made his debut as Jim Valance. The JV was in honor of the top guy and his favorite at the time, Johnny Valentine. After that, he carried ring jackets back for the TV in Philly. This is what he considered his first. Oh, he got $50 for that match, by the way. He got $50, but this is what he considered his payoff was when he got to carry the ring jackets back, the guys at college would see him on TV. Knew, he was going to do something in wrestling. And in 1963, he became a referee, announced as Jim Morrison. Of course, way before Jim Morrison and the Doors hit. So he's a little bit ahead of his time there. And we'll save that little spot there, what he used to do after he showed up refereeing, because you got that down towards one of the top reasons that we liked him. Mm-hmm. And we'll go down there. So I'm going to skip down to where you're at now. Because that's the stuff I wrote out of the book that I read that I thought was interesting to lead us into it. As the professor said, if anyone could find it, by God, a professor could find it. It just so happened one summer several years ago I bought that book, and that's why I had it, because there isn't a whole lot on there. And plus, you always find those WWE things that I like to bitch about when you find something. So number 10 is just a full background. I gave you pretty much a good background on JJ. And now we're going to go to number 9 and let the professor take over because it's his specialty.
Yeah. So JJ Dillon, in my head and everybody else's, he's either an office guy or a manager, right? I mean, that's what we think of. Mm-hmm. But he did start as a wrestler. And held several titles, it looks like. Central States Wrestling, he was the NWA Central States Tag Team Champion one time with Buzz Tyler. Championship Wrestling from Florida, he was the NWA Florida Heavyweight Champion once. He was the Florida Tag Team Champion with Roger Kirby once. Florida Television Champion once. Over in the ESA, he was Eastern Sports Association, ESA International Heavyweight Champion one time. International Tag Team Championship with Freddie Sweetan one time. North American Heavyweight Champion one time. NWA Western State Sports, he was the International Heavyweight Champion Amarillo version one time. NWA Western States Television Champion one time. And in Georgia Championship Wrestling, he was the Macon Heavyweight Champion one time. So he actually carried quite a few titles during his time as a wrestler.
Yeah, sure did. And then reading that book, of course, he did talk about some of those, like Georgia Championship, and he also talked about going over for the Funks over there in Amarillo. How much he was learning at that time as a wrestler, just learning to get over and stuff, because he did, do some refereeing and eventually started working. And that's what he said, how he learned to work was being in the ring as a referee. No one actually taught him, but he just kept watching and listening. He knew enough to be out of the camera's way for those TVs as a referee, and he knew enough how to apply some pressure when he was doing holds and stuff as he learned on, because he had judo background and he had a little bit of the college background of wrestling. So he wasn't technically trained by anyone, but you get the chance to go out to the Funks out there in Amarillo, you're going to learn something, and they end up putting a NWA International Heavyweight Championship title on. Same thing with Georgia. He's down there. They put the Macon, Georgia heavyweight title on him. Little things like that, man. That gives you that career. Those little things that all add up. So anyway.
Oh yeah. What, Bobby? Let me see if I remember correctly here. You were actually starting to train before anybody smartened you up to what wrestling really was like, right?
Pretty much so, yes.
I wonder how common that was back in the day. I mean, because I guess you got to make room for people to wash out, right?
Oh, man. Yeah, I guess. I think it's a matter of people bringing you in like that, too.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't smarten you up right away. I remember I went to Lexington. The world famous Green brothers were there. Donnie and Al Green were doing a thing with some young guys, and one of the guys was helping the guys getting into the ring. He said, "Hey, this is Mark," and he kept holding the rope open for Mark, because none of us knew. But I was like, "Fuck, he just now called me Mark. Everyone here must be fucking named Mark." And I said, my name's Bobby. He's kind of laughing, "Get in the ring, Mark." Get in the ring, Mark. And I just kept getting in the ring because there's about 5 or 6 of us. So I don't know. It's like this here, like JJ, same thing. You get to take the ring jackets back. Need a referee one night, setting up the ring. I set up the ring a lot of times. That's what I was doing. My brother and I had done it quite a bit, but when I was wanting to get into the business, I went down to some of them shows, and someone said, "Hey, come down to Lexington. We'll have 5 or 6 guys. We're gonna do a little tryout thing if you want." And then I drove to the Monster Factory up in New Jersey with Charlie Fulton was in the ring, and Larry Sharp was on like a PM magazine special, and he come in afterwards, and they gave me a little tryout, just trying little things, So no one was like going out of their way to smarten me up right away. But also I was getting a little bit of an in there, like I know a little bit,
Yeah.
Enough that I wasn't getting my ass kicked because I wasn't ever been a smart ass trying to fight people, like, "Hey, I know this is, something like that," but also enough to know, be respectful, and if someone's willing to teach you something to listen,
Yeah.
So then I hope it answered your question. I went around the world because we're going to go around the world with JJ here in just a second, looks like.
Yeah, well, no, that answers the question, or at least it's, you know, gets me enough info, because I was just curious, because, you know, there's always the stories about, like, Hulk Hogan showing up, I think, in Florida. Hey, teach me to wrestle, so they broke his fucking leg. You know? You know, there's these stories like this, and I wonder, like, you know, how much, because, you know, there's some awful hazing stories out there. There really are.
Oh, yeah, they broke Pat Tanaka's leg, too.
Yeah, I mean...
broke his leg. You know, his dad didn't want him to wrestle, and he broke his fucking leg, and Pat came back, though, you know.
Yeah.
That's the way it is sometimes.
So, for you guys, I'm sure that it got fucked with pretty heavy, but at least you didn't get your leg broken. But I'd always wondered back in the day, you know, and you hear the stories about the guys showing up, and like the snake pit, and they end up leaving fucking covered in blood, wearing nothing but their underwear. You know, just how many times, like, people actually got in for the training, and it's like, all right, now that you're getting ready to wrestle your first match, we got to tell you something, you know?
Yeah. I don't know. I think just a good rule of thumb, you know, common sense, you know, depends on who's training you, who's helping you, what office you're working for, you know. What do we do, what do we don't do with this kid, you know?
Yeah.
So, again, it's one of those things where if you're respectful, I think, and have some knowledge and some athletic ability, you know, I think you got a, you know, really good chance, especially nowadays. You know, it's not like it was way back when I was, you know, breaking in. That was a long damn time ago, man. So, anyway, it looks like mine and JJ's career are kind of alike in a sense, and that is, I used to talk to JJ about this. I got my break up in the Maritimes up there, and we toured Moncton, or excuse me, yeah, well, I stayed in Moncton, but it's in New Brunswick, part of Canada, the Grand Prix up there, Halifax over in all of Nova Scotia, several good towns there. And once a week we'd go over PEI, Prince Edward Island. We did Somerville, I think, was one town, and Charlottesville was another. But we had like a 7-day loop. Sometimes you wrestled on Sundays. The money wasn't great, but it was a good starting pay for, you know, a young rookie, guy to get a couple of years of experience in up there. JJ I think he went up there twice. I lived in Moncton, and our first town was called Cocan, and it's about 20 minutes from Moncton. And I think when I talked to JJ and this other gentleman, Les Thatcher, I know one of them was there 1 year and one of them was there for 2 years, obviously before I was there. But anyway, they had worked that territory. And so when I spoke to JJ as a businessman, you know, trying to come into WCW, and when I first met Les Thatcher, when I first come into Smoky Mountain Wrestling, I had that connection with them. Mm-hmm. They knew I had worked up there. And the connection was the Cormier brothers, Leo Burke being one of them, the Animal, the Beast, rather, the Beast. He worked in the winters when they shut down. They only do seasons up there because you're wrestling inside at ice arenas. And, of course, they play ice hockey on ice arenas, and that's a big sport up in Canada. So they only ran from about the end of May, beginning of June, to about the middle of maybe the first week of October. Sometimes they'd go over a little bit by a week or so, but usually by September the boys were moving out of there. But the Beast, he would go out there and work in Amarillo or down in Florida for that territory. So he worked full time, but he only did about 4 or 5 months in his home area. He had a brother named Bobby K and Rudy K. I'm sorry not to know which one, but Bobby K, I think it was, passed away last year. We didn't have him on our list, but I found out just a couple of days ago one of the K brothers had passed away. But again, you got Leo Burke, man. He was a tremendous worker. He was up there, and I was up there with Ron Starr. So I was up there with Ron Starr and Goldie Rogers and Eddie Watts, and just a really, really good crew. And speaking of Ron Starr, I should give a shout out to Rock Rims. I got my Bad to the Bone, the Ron Starr story. I got that book in just the other day, Jeremy. But what I was getting at here is when I spoke to JJ and I spoke to Les, it gave me a common ground. I think they stayed out of Shadiac, and I stayed over in Moncton. And we all had pretty much the same kind of towns, how they had that same schedule. You knew where you was at on Monday and Tuesday, and Wednesday was a spot show. You knew Thursday you go on a ferry to go to the island, and on Friday you had to take off for Nova Scotia. And then you stayed over there until late Sunday evening. We would finish up in North Sydney, Nova Scotia, which was way out at the tip of Nova Scotia, where you caught the boat over to Newfoundland. That's how far out north it was. It's way out there, man. And but it was a good territory, a good place to learn. And I enjoyed my time there. I could do 2 tours. Both of them lasted about 16, 18 weeks, I guess. And like I said, it wasn't getting rich, but I saved a little bit of money and had a place to live, and met a couple nice girls, and met some real nice guys that were, again, Robert, the big Acadian giant, he was up there. It was his rookie year. Todd McPhee. We had a little Indian guy named Soaring Eagle, and they were like Rico and myself. They were there willing to learn and bust their ass. And them older guys and vets, they really put together a good territory for us, So, and after a couple years after I left, Emile Dupree used to run it. It was called Grand Prix, but those 2 summers, Emile didn't run it, but he opened it back up. And of course, his son, Rene Dupree, come out there and made it all the way to the WWE, So, just some good stories, some road stories there,
Oh yeah.
A connection with them. And also he went to Florida to be trained. That was my sole mission of going to Florida when I took off there. I'd been in correspondence with Phyllis Lee, who used to do the help with the Malenko Wrestling Academy there. And that's where I had the great pleasure of meeting Professor Boris Malenko, just like of course, I didn't get to eat a piece of Mr. Malenko. He was always on my ass about eating healthy. But along came Dean, and eventually along came Jody and Carl Gotch, because they had been doing some other stuff at the time. Dean had been spending a lot of time in Japan, but after I was there about 4 or 5 months, Dean come back and he started helping me and my another guy. And I stayed there at the camp and eventually moved into another apartment. But hell, X-Pac was there and learning. Had a big guy that had been to Japan a whole lot, Jumbo Beretta, big Cuban guy. We had a real good crew of guys that were, my brother went over there some and worked out sometimes. Brady Boone would stop in. Drawing a couple blanks. Killer B, what's his name? He owned a couple of gyms. He'd stop in before he was going to Japan.
It was Brian Blair.
Brian Blair.
Okay.
Brian Blair stopped by several times. When he'd go to Japan, he'd need someone to tighten up with, and I'd get to work out these guys. He owned a couple of gyms not too far from where the actual wrestling ring was set up at. And this was after he'd done the Killer Bees run. He was still doing some stuff over in Japan. So you got to meet and train a lot of these guys. So when you got to WCW, I already knew some people in the back, whether it be from that had worked in, Smoky Mountain on their way up or down, depending. Mm-hmm. And also just being around Florida with all the people I trained with, of course, got to know, so-and-so here, so-and-so, Sean and I, X-Pac, we set up the ring for the NWA down there for Klondike Bill one Sunday at Sarasota. And it was one of them times Cornette was having a match with the tuxedo matches or whatever him and Paulie Dangerously were doing, And Samoan SWAT team had a cage match with Midnight or something. And hell, we got, $5 each to set up the ring. We as happy as can be, just being around the wrestling business, but also making connection. They see your face, Like I knew Bob Eaton a long time before I actually got into business, because every time that he was on a show anywhere near me, for example, up here in Huntington, West Virginia, or Charleston, or that show down there in Sarasota, I always made sure I spoke to Bobby, because Bobby's one of the nicest guys ever, and they see you hanging out enough, like, okay, this guy really does want to get into the business.
Yeah.
He's not being a mark. As JJ said, he was a mark for the business, and I think we all are at some point, Anyway. My career and his does kind of go along that way, although I never made it to an office job. But as a lifelong fan, that's going to take us number 7. So finish it up here on number 7, Professor.
Yeah, so apparently in the mid-1950s, about the time he was 14 years old, is when pretty much like a lifelong love for pro wrestling had started with JJ. Some of his early favorites would be Nature Boy Buddy Rogers, Bobby Davis, who was Nature Boy's manager, Al Costello, who was part of the comedy duo Abbott and Costello, Roy Heffernan. Oh, wait, no, I was wrong. Al Costello, huh? Fabulous Kangaroos, Wild Red Berry. There's another story about Red Berry that is just tickling my brain that I can't think of what it is right now.
Oh, I'd like to hear it sometime.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to dig around and try to remember what it was, because it was a hell of a funny story, but I'm just not remembering it right at the moment.
Yeah.
And of course, he was a big fan of Johnny Valentine, to the point where he actually formed, which was a much more common thing back then, he created a fan club for Johnny Valentine.
Yeah, I forgot that.
Which lasted about a year. That was kind of like a big thing fans could do back, I don't know, probably tapered off in the 70s, I'm guessing. But a lot of these guys who you hear about they started with like fanzines, fan clubs, and all this stuff back in the day. Yeah. And, and kind of like you're talking about, just kind of hanging around and being around, eventually you just kind of get accepted in, Yeah. And it sounds like that's where JJ kind of took off and headed in that direction from.
Right.
And as far as like heroes in the business, Buddy Rogers isn't a bad one to go with.
Right.
Yeah.
You talk about fan clubs too. I know a lot of people have mentioned they started a fan club. If you listen to other podcasts, and if you listen to ours, of course, we mentioned some other people that started them. I'm going to say up until probably late 80s even, maybe, only because it could have been definitely in the 70s. I'm sure it was dropping off, so I don't know how far up into the 80s they were dropping off. But what I was going to get at is they had the pen pals in the magazines, and you'd have Bill Smith, looking for female pen pals from, Kentucky or wherever, and he's looking for worldwide, and his favorite wrestler is, Buddy Rogers, whatever, but also president of the, Buddy Rogers fan club. Someone else would have fan clubs too, and they'd collaborate, through those correspondence of the pen pal things. I remember seeing, a person's name. Some of those people in there, I will say this, if you looked at some of their pictures, they were a little bit too old to be wrestling fans to be looking for girls, and I think several of them must have ended up in the fucking penitentiary or something,
I'm thinking a couple of these guys, a couple of these guys probably had pits in their basements.
What we was talking about before the show. It rubs the lotion on. It rubs the lotion in.
God,
what we was talking about. I'm going to let y'all in. Professor and I are starting an OnlyFans page. So we were thinking about it. I don't think it'll make very much money, but anyway, that's not happening. It's just an offside joke we was making. But yeah, that's some great stuff about JJ there once again. Now, here's where the professor is going to really have to take over on number 6, because I'm sitting there, my mind's over at the pit looking down in there like, and I'm one of these voyeurs. People think I'm a swinger. I'm also a voyeur, Jeremy. I like to watch. So, Rick, can I watch? Fill us in on number 6 here, Professor.
Oh God, I have so much trouble with. Well, I have so much trouble with all the details because I just get hung up on Ron Garvin and drag, and that's where my brain hits full stop.
Okay.
But what was it? Was it Baby Doll? Who was the girl? I'm drawing a blank.
Well, didn't Barbarian say, "Hey, who's the new chick?" Not Ron Garvin, like Jim Cornette said on there. I think it was Barbarian or someone said, "Who's the new girl?"
But anyhow, so through means that would be considered rape today, Ric Flair gets an opportunity with the valet of Ron Garvin, and fucking James J. Dillon gets all creepy about it. He's like, "Can I hide in the closet and watch?"
Was it Baby Doll? Is that who it was?
I think it was Baby Doll, but right now
okay.
I'm just kind of like drawing a blank, because when I was writing this stuff down, I'll remember all this shit. Now all of a sudden
I've
it's
been
out
in
of
a few
my
of those
head.
closets, I'll tell you. and I've been on the other end where people are watching too.
See, for me, like having somebody hanging out, like watching from the closet, just because I know they're going to be doing things that I don't want to think about. It'd wreck the moment being watched for me,
Hell, I'm watching the other bed. Do what you got to do. I'm just going to roll over here and face the wall, man, what you going to say?
Shit. Yeah, so back in the 80s, there used to be a lot of ugly women hanging around the NWA. A lot of them looked like dudes in lipstick and with bad wigs. And one of them showed up for their night with Ric Flair, and then just started dropping fuckers with hands of stone. You know.
That was that Miss Atlanta Lively, wasn't it?
I believe so.
That was the gimmick, Miss Atlanta Lively, I think.
Yeah, I think that was it.
Ronnie Garvin in drag. Man,
Hey.
can you imagine him being police undercover at a fucking park where some rapes have taken place or some handbag snatching took place, you know, and you grab a hold of fucking Ronnie Garvin's purse or handbag, and he turns around, one of those hands of stone, and no calling 911. He just had right by one bench be like 9 dudes stacked up there, and then a couple blocks down there'd be like 8 dudes stacked up near another bench, and he'd still be having his purse if he was in drag doing working undercover work, I would imagine.
I would think so. I would think so. Yeah. Hey, you know, do you remember early Saturday Night Live? Dan Aykroyd had a character who was a male prostitute.
Oh man.
Was it Ron Garvin? Was that the name?
Oh no, I don't. You're close. You're close. I can't think of who the fuck what it was.
Yeah, it was, and he was all like square, and he'd wear like an ugly plaid suit. Ron Garvin, male prostitute. Oh, I don't think it was Ron Garvin, but goddamn, it sounds right at the moment.
Yeah, that gimmick. I'd have to look it up, but I remember right now. As you said that male prostitute. He would show up and he'd stand there and thrust out a little bit. Yeah. Shit. We'll have to look that up, man. It was Dan Aykroyd done the gimmick though.
Fred Garvin, that was it. Fred Garvin.
Man, you wasn't off that far, man.
No.
You wasn't off that far at all.
God, and I probably haven't seen that bit in 40 fucking years, you know.
Yeah. We pulled that one up, man. Wow.
Yeah, so, but in short, you know, JJ wanted to be a little, closet creep, and because of that, he got his ass beat. They used to do some really weird angles, like some stuff, you know, there's some shit in there that just makes me cringe when you go back and you think about, like, oh yeah, if I beat you in this match, your valet belongs to me. That's some shit that had been illegal since the 1860s, you know?
Well, you know what it reminds me of too is the Seinfeld episode when they're trying to sell NBC's interested in their show again, the show about nothing.
Yeah.
But then they get the Japanese, 3 people from the Japanese NBC there to Nakatora broadcasting company or something, and they're explaining that because of a car accident and Jerry didn't have any car insurance. He has to become his
butler.
Butler, yeah.
Yeah.
And they're like, is this a common custom? You know, so it's like that on wrestling, man. So if I beat you in this match, it's common custom. You know, your valet is now my housekeeper for the next fucking month. You know, I don't. Some of that stuff, like you said, is just really crazy. But where we come up with that stuff, I don't know. Of course, that was a knockoff of a show, but we're talking about wrestling. Fuck, people had to do different things, man, different angles that got over. Some flew and some didn't, you know. There's just some weird things, and I'm sure some of them you could find a way to use now, but other ones you're just like, that's just flat out exploitation. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know how the Vice Squad's not kicking your door in, you know. All right, well, let's move on with number 5, the client list that JJ Dillon had, man, because it's quite impressive, as we know. Go ahead and start a couple that he managed, and if you want to do them all, that's fine, or I'll do the first half, you do the second half, however you want to do it.
I'll just throw out a couple names here. Abdullah the Butcher, the Mongolian Stomper, Brute Bernard, Buddy Landell. You want to handle a couple?
I was just going to say I'd seen some, the old video of him out there managing the Nature Boy, Buddy Landell. That was a big thing for Buddy at that time, Mm-hmm. Moondog Maine, Ox Baker, Waldo Von Erich, David Von Erich, Thunderfoot, and Butch Reed. So I'm going to let you take over some tag team from there, because I think that covers all those singles really quite well.
Well, okay, so the Long Riders, Cowboy Ron Bass and Black Bart. I
was hoping you'd do it that way, Bob.
Yeah, and probably most famously, most importantly, most notably, the Four Horsemen.
Yes, the Four Horsemen. And he gives the fans credit for creating that, even though he puts Arn over. But also, he managed Tully first, correct? Before the formation of the Four Horsemen.
Yeah, so Baby Doll had been Tully's manager, and then through some shenanigans, JJ comes in and he takes over, and there was the week. Well, and I think we're going to talk about this.
Blanchard Enterprises or something.
Yeah, and there was a week where they were shooting the show for Saturday night, and they had to put a promo for the following week. They were running short on time, so they were like, all right. And, okay, so now my memory's going to gap a little bit here. Tully was either national champion or TV champion, and it doesn't really matter which, but he was one of those. So they kind of went to everybody and said, okay, Tully, you're champion, you go out there. Ric Flair, you're world champion, you go out there. Anderson's, you're tag team champions, you guys go out there.
Yeah.
And we can't talk about specifics, just get out there and promote these cities for next week. So all of them took their turn on the mic, and then Arn had a style, man. Arn, you just hand him a fucking microphone, and then everybody just sit down and shut the fuck up for a minute. Because he'd just start rapping, and some shit would come out of his mouth.
He was like E.F. Hutton. When he spoke, people listened.
Yeah, and he'd just start rapping, and then so he throws out the term Four Horsemen with the fingers.
Yeah.
And we're actually going to come into this a little bit later, but since we're a couple steps away, I'll kind of stop there. But that was where it first started, and that is where probably most of us know JJ for. I mean, except you, because you actually dealt with him personally. But that's probably a big part of JJ's legacy in the business, is being connected to the Four Horsemen. And, of course, that was accidental, and just because he was Tully Blanchard's manager. Which is going to bring us to number 4, that on top of everything that JJ did, he wrestled, he managed, but he was also an office guy. Yep. And that actually transitioned quite nicely, because, Bobby, you dealt with JJ some.
Yes, I did. And he was always very professional to me and very courteous to me. As a matter of fact, I had been working well over a month before I got to see JJ, and I had already been to North Carolina, Charlotte, and worked, and then I had went to Orlando, and I worked a loop down there for like 10 or 12 days at Universal, and then also Fort Myers and Tampa and some of those, regular cities in Florida while I was there. And then I flew out to San Bernardino. I got a phone call. I was home, actually. I wasn't even booked. I got a phone call, and it's from JJ Dillon. And he said, Bobby, JJ Dillon, and yes, sir. And he said, we need you in San Bernardino for this upcoming TV. I was like, oh, yes, sir, no worries. And he told me, what the procedure was to get an e-ticket and all that. But apparently, I'm not sure who, but I dealt with Terry Taylor quite a bit. But anyway, for whatever reason, I had just been there, like I said, about a month or so. It could have been an overlook. It could have been anything. But they basically just called me one night and put me on a flight the very next day to San Bernardino, California, and I wrestled Juventud Guerrero and was told give him a very strong match and just take the pin, basically. Anyway, when I got to the building, instead of finding Terry, I went and found JJ, because that's who called me. And we talked for a little while, and that's where I told him I had worked up in the Maritimes, and knew a couple names he knew, and we just hit it off, not like best pals, not like that. About a 10-minute conversation, him just filling me out a little bit, background information, etc. And then he said, I still think you need to go see Terry, by the way. And I said, no problem. And nice to talk to you. And that was that. And then I went and spoke to Terry, and Terry said, okay, this is what we're going to do. This was after kicking out of Alex Wright's finish earlier in the month or whatever. He was like, I don't care if you kick the shit out of Juventud. He's not very big. And he said, but don't kick out his finish. I'm like, okay. He goes, just go out there and have a good match with him. He's high flyered. He's actually pretty easy to get along with. And I was like, okay, Terry, whatever. Yeah. You're not gonna have any trouble from me. Not tonight, anyway. But anyway, through the next couple of years, I dealt with JJ and on and off, depending on what they needed, and depending on when they called me, who would call me, it would usually be Terry Taylor called me for the first time, but after that, usually it was JJ or Paul Orndorff, because they would be in the office and be agents, like more there in the office, not so much out on the road agent like, you know, an Arn or Terry or Kevin would be. So usually if I got to speak from someone from the office, it'd be, I spoke to Paul several times, but also JJ more not. And he'd say, hey, Bobby, they got, you know, he'd just tell me something. And I'm sure it was just, again, mix up. You got 150 guys at one point on that contract. But he'd said something like, you know, I need you to go to, it was up in, not Albany, New York. Can't think of the town now. Saratoga. Had to go to Saratoga, and one of the overnight deals like, hey, just can you go to the airport tomorrow, get an e-ticket? We need you up here, you know, blah, blah, blah. No big deal. Just, you know, you have to work X amount of days, but I was already, say I'd already worked 5 or 6 days and then came home was scheduled to be off, you know, for the next 2 weeks maybe until the next two TVs came up, you know. But he was always like, you know, leadway there, you know. We got stuck one time in lacrosse. We was going to wrestle in La Crosse, Wisconsin. And a couple people, I'll just say a couple people failed drug test and got sent home. And so I was just supposed to fly up there and do a TV. And it was me and Scott and Steve, Nick Patrick, and Brad Armstrong. That's what I was trying to think of. It was Scott and Brad. I'm sorry. Me, Scott, and Brad, Nick Patrick, and then there's a couple other guys. They pulled us to the side and said, hey, man, we got 2 more nights of shows. And it was JJ. He goes, we got 2 more nights of shows, and we need you guys to stay. You know, we'll exchange your tickets. We'll take care of you. And gave everyone a $200 advance right there on the spot, you know. Call home, make arrangements, whatever. So basically, you know, an extra couple $100 to get an extra couple matches in up there. Of course, they'll draw it off your show money at the end of the month. But you know, if you only took a couple $100 in a credit card to travel or whatever, you know, that was the thing. He didn't leave us out there, our asses in the wind. You know, we done Minnesota, we done La Crosse, Wisconsin, and I think like I say, each night they gave us a couple $100 extra for expenditures and stuff like that. And then at the end of the deal, you know, got flown home, and JJ was very thankful for that. And then, of course, the final phone call came. I think it was on a Tuesday night. And I was sitting on my front porch and got a phone call, went in and answered it, and it was JJ. And he said, Bobby, it's one of the hardest things I need to do as part of my job. And he said, just wanted to give you a heads up. You're going to be getting a slip from FedEx in the next day or two. And, you know, regrettably, we got to let you go. As you know, we've been making cutbacks and been changes. And I was like, you know, oh, yes, sir. Thank you very much. And wanting to say fuck you, but I didn't, of course. I said, I think you owe me some I said, I got some airline tickets here to New Orleans. And I said, I will not be at that show. And he said, well, I really wish you would go to that show. And I said, well, I don't think I'm going to because I'm no longer an employee. I said, you've terminated my employment. And I said, so I'm just going to send the airline tickets back. But also you owe me, and they did. They owed me a couple airline tickets, the reimbursements that I'd paid for in a row where things weren't as smooth as say La Crosse, where they handed you the $200. Like up in Syracuse, I think, you know, I had to change a ticket. It cost more than $400 to change it from like Cincinnati to Ohio, to West Virginia, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, so JJ and I sit on the phone. We talked it out. He said, well, you know, just here's what I'd like you to do. And it was just 2 gentlemen discussing business, really. I wasn't being a hard ass going, no, I'm not showing up to or nothing like that. I was just like, you know, we just talked, and I said, he said, well, I'll make sure. And he was writing notes, it seemed like, and I was writing notes. I know I was. And I said, I need to get reimbursed for this amount. And he, you know, everything worked out that I got paid for the reimbursement for the airline tickets. I mailed back the tickets that they had sent me to New Orleans. And then, you know, they sent an agreement that I'd be getting my royalties from the Nitro, the EA Sports video game, of course, and also any and the thing I got really made me feel really good about JJ when all this is said and done. So I signed my contract on like September 9th or something like that, a couple years prior. Well, I was telling you the story. I went out there when we was talking about Jimmy Hart. I went out to Roanoke, Virginia, and I didn't have a medical clearance, but they asked me to stick around anyway. So right around that time, being 3 years later, I guess it was, my contract had rolled over. So I didn't have to, you got a 90-day rollover clause. And when JJ sent me the paperwork, he was kind enough that it missed by a couple of days, like at the September 9th, to where paperwork wasn't signed to, like, say, September 15th. So I got an automatic 90-day no complete clause. And that's a blessing because I got checks through the months of all of October, all of November, and all of December. So basically I got paid. Hell, I took off to Japan in November of that year. But anyway, it was just like I said, because I wasn't being an asshole on the phone, you know, and I knew I was getting let go. Everyone was getting let go. But we just had a few little minor discussions, like what do they think they owe me? What do I think I owe them, et cetera. Mm-hmm. And the way he signed it was, and the way it was turned in, it had that date on there. Therefore, instead of going without, 3 months of checks, and that would have been like my last check when I mailed them airline tickets in, and then reimbursement for the airline tickets that I had coming, I'd been flat on my ass. But instead, I had that 90-day complete peak calls, and that was a big deal to have, and I know it was because JJ took care of it,
Yeah.
And that's because I wasn't an asshole, I think. And also I know it had to be a tough position because how many people, if I recall right, it was about 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening on a Tuesday evening. And how many people did he ever call that day or had been calling for the past couple of weeks, to say Scott or John or Jeremy, this is one of the hardest things I have to do with my job. But as you know, and then how many of those people may have been assholes to him, or how many people might have been, we're just talking business here. This is what I think.
The messenger gets shot as often as not.
Yeah.
So,
but no, really good interactions. Nothing negative to say. And if I did, I wouldn't, broadcast it to the world anyway, but I don't. That's the thing. And the last time I saw JJ, I barely missed meeting for the first time our good friend and now deceased, though, Tex Johnson. We went up there to that Bobby Fulton's memorial show they had up in Chillicothe, Ohio several years back, a memorabilia show, I said memorabilia show, and JJ was there. And I went up and spoke to him, just like gentlemen, like I said, no hard feelings, nothing like that. Was glad to see him. And anyway, did my thing, saw everyone, and I left to come back home. I was having some eye problems at the time and didn't want to drive at night. But anyway, about a week or so later, when we start talking to Tex, him and his wife were at that fucking show, man. They'd gotten there right after I left. And he had a picture of him and JJ, and he sent me the picture, and sure enough, he was at that same show, and he said we could have met then. We ended up, of course, meeting over in West Virginia several months later, but still, that's weird how we're wrestling fans. We're showing up, mm-hmm. and we're there to sign autographs or take pictures or get autographs and stuff. And but anyway, that's the last time I saw JJ. I guess that's been about 3 years ago now, up there at Chillicothe on one of Bobby's super shows. I think it was he had a fan day and did a big show that night. Like I said, I left before the nighttime went. Heard the show was really packed out, and that's a good building to work in too. And he's actually got some more of those scheduled, but due to this COVID, we didn't get to do one this year.
Yeah.
He moved it from October to April, and then that got shut down. So I don't know when he'll be doing another one if we get back up that way. But I can't wait to get out there when this stuff goes away. And because I'm not going to go out there until I feel it's very, very safe as far as one of these fan fests and stuff.
Oh, sure.
I just don't want to do that right now. But back to JJ. Yeah, pretty good interaction with them. And I just shared that story with you. I'm going to let you take over here on number 3 about Vince and Bruno. Tell them about that little interaction there. And I thought this was really, really interesting. This is how you stay in someone's good graces also, man. So I'm really thankful that I got to meet JJ. Once I actually worked for him, but I worked through through him, I worked for the company, and the message, like you said, the messages a lot of times came from JJ. And luckily, there's all really positive interactions, and he understood where I was coming from, being one of the boys, and I understood where he come from being upper management.
Yeah. So number 3, this one we're going to talk about Vince Sr. and Bruno Sammartino a little bit. So, JJ would chase the shows, obviously. He'd still try to make every show he could reach. And Vince Sr. would have a ref slip him $20 when he wasn't used and $100 when he was.
Yep.
And then one night, I guess he had a match with Bruno. And
he managed the main event of Bruno's match.
Okay.
Bruno, I can't remember who he wrestled. It was Bruno's main event match with, I'm drawing a blank on who the match was against.
Okay.
But he did main event that night.
Yeah. So he was paid the standard 100, and he didn't feel it was right. So a couple weeks later, he went and talked to Bruno. Bruno went and talked to Vince, and he got spiffed another 200 by the promoter of the show. Bruno asked him, hey, is that going to be good, or is that going to take care of it? He said, yeah, that's fine. And this actually led to him having a better long-term relationship with Vince Sr., Bruno, and the local promoters as well.
Sure did. And I read that. I thought that was pretty amazing. I'm sorry I can't remember who the main event was, but apparently it was a big, big house there, and they were actually over in Reading, Pennsylvania, where he was going to college at. After he worked that main event. So when Bruno come to Reading, that's when he brought it to his attention. He just asked him, just professional, like I said, 2 gentlemen talking. I imagine he said, Bruno, do you have a moment? And he said, I feel like the other day the big house like that, I should have got a little bit more of my end working the main event. And then that's when, a couple weeks later, another promoter put him an envelope, handed him $200, and Bruno asked him later on in the locker room or wherever, hey, you all right with that? Yes. And that was one of those things. He had a lot of respect for Bruno, and also because he went to bat for the boys, and he didn't have to, because as he said, he was just refereeing at the time, but he knew his job and felt he was doing it very good. And also it made a more of a business relationship for him and Vince Sr. That, it's just not one of the guys that's coming over and getting $20 that you're kind of, hey, that kid's here again, or, oh, we're going to use him tonight and give him $100. They're like, oh, this guy's really understanding our business. He may want them main event matches now, and take that responsibility. So that's a big step in developing a professional relationship in the wrestling business. A lot of that's just based off respect and handshakes. And I think if anyone listens to this program knows, I think Vince Sr., they say that he carried a notebook in his front pocket with a pencil and a handshake. And with that handshake, it was as good as anything. That was his word, man. And he pulled out. He thought she owed you $200. He told you he's paying you $200. That's what you got, And heard a lot of good things about the older guys, and on other podcasts and stuff have said how much they enjoyed working with him because they knew they were going to get what they was owed, and it was going to be very respectful. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, you got to like any time that you're told, hey, this is going to happen, and it happens regardless. Yeah. Bobby, I got to tell you real quick. I just got a text from my mom saying she sent me a pizza, and it's going to be here at any time, so my doorbell could ring. So
okay, man.
Thanks, Mom.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
She's feeling bad for not having cooked Christmas dinner last week, so she's sending me a pizza, which I'll take. It's hard to be upset about a free pizza.
Absolutely, man. So, folks, if you hear a doorbell ring, we'll have a virtual pizza with the professor.
That's it. Well,
and we only got a couple more to go here.
Yeah.
So, dumb number 2 here.
All right.
Credits to fans for the creation of the 4 Horsemen, but you go ahead and tell the story there because you was bringing it up earlier.
Yeah. So, Arn came up with accidentally came up with the hand signal in the name. And JJ says by that night they were seeing fans use the term and throwing up the four fingers. And so a couple weeks go by, and Jimmy Crockett pulls him aside, and he's like, "Hey, what's this 4 Horsemen, ring-a-rig about?" And he was like, "Well, I think we better pay attention to the fans." But what's interesting here is the 4 Horsemen might have been the first semi faction in pro wrestling that they weren't a tag team. They weren't like a 6-man tag team or anything. They were a tag team and 2 individuals, and they didn't go to the ring together all that often. That wasn't really a thing. But they were the guys with the most gold and the baddest, the baddest reputations, and they took off as this thing. And JJ definitely says it was the fans that did it. That could have just been a one-time sentence.
Yeah.
But because the fans took to it, it's
we also done a special episode, if you remember. I wasn't trying to talk over you there. Sorry about that. Mm-hmm. We did the greatest stables and greatest factions in professional wrestling. And we had up there, of course, the stud stables, and we had the 4 horsemen and this and that. But also, that's when we discovered the Freebird rule on that episode. We overlapped overlapped them with the Freebird rule because we done a legitimate top 10, and number 1 was the 4 horsemen, of course, and that was a fun episode to do, overlapping them with the fabulous Freebirds and creating that Freebird rule for a show, which we will not be having on this program today, by the way. There's no Freebird rule. We just got one more thing to talk about right here, and that is JJ was Dusty's right-hand man at JCP. Tell us a little bit about that, Professor, before your doorbell rings there.
Yes, this is one I was having a little more trouble trying to track down. I actually had to go and try to see if I could pull notes from his old podcast. But apparently JJ was, you remember like that character that Matthew McConaughey played in True Detective where they called him the tax man because of that big ass notebook? Apparently JJ was a meticulous note taker. He wrote down everything. He was super organized, super on top of stuff. And I would assume that Dusty seeing this, you can always use somebody who's a little more organized to help out with shit, even if you're super organized. Mm-hmm. Probably catch on to that. You're like, okay, this guy's watching everything. He takes note of everything. But also I have to figure that if you're Dusty and your right-hand man is the manager of the villain faction you're always fighting with, that's got to be a good position to be in because you can really control kind of the flow of the story and things because you're both on the same page.
Oh, yeah.
But I've heard him say several times that he was like Dusty's right-hand guy. I just have trouble finding anything to really reference with it outside of those couple points.
Yeah. Well, I think with his future jobs, it probably, staying with WCW, didn't want to work for Vince and WWF, coming back to WCW, going back to Vince again, staying employed mainly, shows how meticulous he was and how much influence he had. And I know from reading his book there, when he jumped one time, it was like, they're offering me this much to come back to Atlanta, basically. And Vince said, hey, here's what I'm offering you. If this is good enough, you're welcome. And JJ took it, and one thing he did say, he said it was hard living in Connecticut, and you hear that a lot. If you're not from Connecticut, you're from the South, but I guess it was just the cost of living up there, to travel, and the cost of living compared to what you're making. You got to be one of the top guys to be making, good enough money. And at the time, I think JJ was getting in real estate and had some deals down in Atlanta. So when he was done there, he was pretty much done, at that point with the wrestling business as far as working for the WWE, and being involved in wrestling. And I think now he does some fan cades, whatever the fucking called, and autograph signings. And like I said, I think he had a podcast at one time. I've heard him as a guest on several podcasts. I know he's on that Back to the Territories with Jim Cornette. He's on that, telling stories, about the Carolinas and stuff. And with that, that's going to be my segue to that's where we're going next week, right?
Yes.
The Carolinas.
We're going to go in the Carolinas.
JCP and probably most around Charlotte. And we're going to try to hit as much as that we can. Try to take a deep dive like we did on Texas and Memphis. And we're going to try to do one on the JCP territory or Mid-Atlantic area, if you will. Anyway, that's going to be a week of some homework for us, Professor.
Yeah, that's going to take some digging.
I think there'll be some stuff out there for it, though. I think you had sent me some stuff before. We worked on another project, and I probably don't have it now, but I know you had some stuff that about the JCP at one point you had found for us. So I'm sure there's some out there. Anything else we got to go before your pizza gets there, man?
Let's see here. Was there anything else? No. I did want to throw out at you, Bobby, how come we haven't talked about a Magnum TA episode? Because.
Oh, okay.
Because one thing I was thinking of today as I'm watching all this stuff is that when Magnum's career came to an end, that was damaging to the industry as a whole. And I think that's something to kind of stop and look at. But other than that, I think I'm all caught up for the week. How about you?
Okay, well, it's the first of the week, new year, and I'm just going to tell you like I tell me. I'm going to try to wash my hands, wear my mask and social distance, and try to take care of myself mentally, man, and not be too hard on myself, and with that said, man, I'm just, I'm hoping some changes come that are positive in 2021. I'm going to stay as optimistic as possible. And I'm just glad we had time to record this podcast today. And I'm glad to be back with all the wrestling fans out there. We're glad to have you. Please share our podcast. Please tell a friend. Please retweet us. I'm at Bobby Blaze 744. Jeremy is at the Geekish Cast, and a joint account is Bell to Bell Blaze. We would really appreciate it. We're stuck at a couple different numbers right now as far as listeners for the week goes, and also as far as followers overall go. And we'd like to do something about that in 2021. So also, if you have any ideas for us, please send them in at those Twitter addresses at Bell to Bell Blaze, or the Geekish Cast, or myself at Bobby Blaze 744. I'd appreciate it very much. I love the feedback that I do get. We appreciate it when you listen to our show. Anyway, with that said, Jeremy, you can get us out of here, man. I'm good.
All right. Well, with that going on there, let's keep in mind, get out there, but stay safe about it. Let's try to get this year off to the right start. Don't be a dick to anybody. For the late Tex Johnson, myself, Professor Jeremy Vilmur, and Bobby Blaze. Bye-bye, everybody. If we just find the off button.